Imagine this: the most powerful man in the United States standing on a stage warning Google and Microsoft as if a storm is coming. But the storm he fears isn't a weapon or an army. It's a wave of brilliance, discipline, and innovation, and it's coming from India. For years, Indian talent has quietly become the backbone of Silicon Valley, leading billion-dollar projects, running Fortune 500 companies, and shaping the very technologies that define our future. But now that quiet rise is impossible to ignore. Trump's warning wasn't just political rhetoric, it was a signal that America knows it's facing a new kind of competition, one that doesn't march in with tanks, but with code, strategy, and ideas that can change the world. This is not just about tech companies. It's about the shifting balance of global power. And if you think this is only a story about business, think again. It's about the future itself. When we talk about why Trump fears Indian talent, we have to start by understanding a truth that many overlook. Power in the 21st century is no longer defined purely by armies, land, or even natural resources. It is defined by intellectual capital, by who can create, control, and scale the technologies that run the modern world. And in that arena, Indians have emerged not as mere participants, but as leaders. This is not an accident. It's the result of decades of cultural conditioning, educational priorities, and an almost obsessive work ethic that has been quietly cultivated across generations. You walk into any major tech headquarters, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, and you will see an unmistakable pattern. At the helm or in the highest decision-making rooms, there are Indians shaping the company's future. Sundar Pichai steering Google's innovations, Satya Nadella transforming Microsoft's identity, Arvind Krishna redefining IBM's place in the market. This is not token representation. These are positions that decide the direction of industries, the pace of innovation, and the structure of digital economies. For a country like the United States, which has long seen itself as the undisputed leader of technology, this shift feels like the beginning of a new era. One where America no longer monopolizes genius. But here's where the psychology comes in. Nations, like individuals, have egos. America's ego is built on being the place where the brightest minds come to achieve what they couldn't back home. And for decades, that was the truth. But now, the narrative is changing. The very people who once came as immigrants seeking opportunity are now the opportunity. They are not just filling roles, they are redefining what those roles mean. They are creating ecosystems where the advantage is no longer purely American. The dominance of Indian leaders in big tech is a reminder that intellectual power is mobile. It moves where it is nurtured, respected, and allowed to grow. And this is where the fear creeps in. It's not the fear of losing jobs, as political speeches often claim. It's the deeper fear of losing control. Because once you have a critical mass of talent from a different cultural and intellectual tradition shaping your most powerful industries, the entire game changes. Decision-making shifts, priorities shift, the definition of progress itself begins to shift. For someone like Trump, who thrives on maintaining the perception of American supremacy, this isn't just unsettling, it's a direct challenge to the story America has been telling itself for over a century. If there's a lesson here, it's this: the real power in the world isn't in the hands of those who shout the loudest, but in the hands of those who can think the clearest, adapt the fastest, and build the most enduring systems. And right now, an extraordinary number of those hands happen to belong to Indians. The question is not whether this will change the balance of power. It already has. The question is whether the rest of the world is ready to adapt to it. When we talk about the rise of Indian innovation, we're not just discussing a workforce or a collection of talented individuals. We're talking about a cultural phenomenon that has been quietly rewriting the rules of global competition. In Silicon Valley, the heartbeat of technological progress, the most significant breakthroughs are no longer the product of a purely American mindset. Increasingly, they are born from hybrid thinking, a fusion of Eastern problem, solving discipline, and Western risk-taking ambition. And Indians have mastered that fusion better than almost anyone else. Consider the way Indian entrepreneurs and engineers approach a challenge. There is a unique blend of resourcefulness and resilience at play. Many grew up in an environment where infrastructure was limited, where solutions had to be improvised, where progress often meant doing more with less. That upbringing becomes a mental training ground. By the time they step into global markets, they already possess a skill set that allows them to innovate under pressure, adapt rapidly, and think laterally. These are the exact qualities that drive success in industries where the landscape changes by the week. And it's not just the individual brilliance. It's the ecosystem they build. Indian-led companies and teams tend to be deeply collaborative, drawing from diverse skill sets and perspectives. That's because the Indian professional journey often involves navigating a complex, hierarchical society where influence is built through relationships as much as through results. In a globalized economy, this social intelligence is a massive advantage. It allows them to lead multicultural teams, bridge communication gaps, and unify people around ambitious goals. This is where the fear for leaders like Trump becomes more understandable. The innovation edge America has enjoyed for decades relied heavily on controlling the platforms, the patents, and the pipelines of talent. But now, a significant share of that talent is no longer purely American in its worldview. The strategies being implemented at Google, Microsoft, or dozens of tech startups are not rooted in a singular national identity. They are global in design and intention. And global thinking often leads to decisions that don't necessarily align with America First policies. That's the deeper tension here. It's not simply about competition, it's about influence. When innovation is shaped by minds who think beyond borders, the control that political leaders crave begins to dissolve. The very technologies that will define the future, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, clean energy systems, are increasingly being directed by leaders who measure success on a planetary scale, not just within national borders. The truth is, you cannot contain innovation. You cannot legislate brilliance into staying within one country's boundaries. The world's future will be shaped by those who can see beyond the narrow lens of nationalism, and Indian innovators are already proving they can. For anyone paying attention, this isn't a threat to fear. It's a shift to prepare for. Because the question isn't whether these innovators will change the game. The question is whether the rest of the world is willing to play by the new rules they're creating. If there's one factor that truly magnifies the influence of Indians in the global tech arena, it's their mastery of long-term strategic positioning. This isn't just about having the right skills or landing the right jobs. It's about understanding the deeper currents of change and placing themselves exactly where the tides will shift next. That's what separates those who merely participate in the global economy from those who quietly shape it. In the corporate world, especially in technology, timing is everything. You can be brilliant, but if you're positioned in the wrong place when a major shift occurs, you'll be forgotten. What's remarkable about many Indian professionals is their uncanny ability to anticipate where the next wave of opportunity will rise and to prepare for it long before it crests. It's not luck. It's the product of a mindset that combines patience, observation, and relentless preparation. They don't simply react to opportunities. They create the conditions for opportunities to find them. This quality often stems from living in a society where uncertainty is the norm. In such an environment, you learn early to think beyond the immediate moment, to plan in layers, and to hold multiple potential paths in mind at once. This way of thinking becomes an invisible asset in the competitive landscape. While others chase quick wins, they are building foundations, professional networks, cross-industry expertise, multidisciplinary skills that pay off in ways outsiders rarely see coming. This long view also extends to leadership. When Indians step into positions of authority at companies like Google or Microsoft, they tend to think in terms of sustainable growth rather than short-term spikes. They are less seduced by the quarterly report and more concerned with where the organization will stand in 5, 10, or even 20 years. That's why, under their leadership, we often see massive investments in emerging markets, strategic alliances with other nations, and bold pivots into new technologies before competitors even recognize the threat or the opportunity. And here's the reality. This kind of strategic thinking makes political leaders nervous because it operates beyond the boundaries of national politics. A CEO who is thinking in decades is not easily swayed by a political cycle of 4 years. Their loyalty is not to a party or a president, but to a vision of the future that spans continents. That's why when Trump issues warnings to companies like Google and Microsoft about outsourcing or global hiring practices, he's not simply warning them about economics. He's trying to assert control over forces that are fundamentally outside his reach. In the end, the fear is justified, but perhaps for the wrong reasons. The rise of such long-view leadership doesn't signal a loss of jobs or national pride. It signals a shift in who gets to write the rules for the future. And once you understand that, you realize this isn't just about protecting an economy, it's about protecting a worldview. The question we all need to ask is whether we want that worldview to be narrow and self-serving or broad and capable of carrying all of us forward. Because history has shown us, again and again, that those who see furthest are the ones who lead the rest. The fourth and perhaps most underestimated element in this entire dynamic is the cultural resilience and adaptability of Indians in the global technology and business landscape. This is not just about intelligence, technical expertise, or the number of degrees someone holds. It's about the ability to step into radically different environments, absorb their norms, understand their power structures, and yet maintain a distinct identity that draws strength from one's own roots. That is a rare and potent combination, and it's one of the reasons their influence extends far beyond their official job titles. Adaptability here doesn't mean blind conformity. It means the capacity to operate effectively within the rules of a system without becoming confined by them. Indian professionals in companies like Google, Microsoft, or global consulting firms often walk this fine line with remarkable skill. They learn the culture of Silicon Valley or Wall Street, speak its language fluently, align with its metrics of success. But they never entirely abandon the mental frameworks they developed in their own upbringing. In practice, this means they can see solutions that others overlook because they are not trapped within a single way of thinking. This adaptability is also rooted in the psychological reality of navigating contrasts from an early age. Growing up in India often means reconciling extremes: wealth and poverty, tradition and modernity, chaos and precision, all in the same day. That kind of environment forces you to develop a mental elasticity that can serve you in any global context. It's why someone who has navigated an overcrowded street in Mumbai can also navigate the competitive politics of a corporate boardroom in New York. They have already been trained to think several moves ahead, to read between the lines, and to anticipate outcomes that others might dismiss as unlikely. And this is precisely what unnerves political leaders like Trump. Adaptability, when combined with technical competence and strategic vision, creates a workforce and leadership class that can't easily be pressured or outmaneuvered. They don't just survive change, they use it as a stepping stone to something greater. When you have leaders in technology who can pivot an entire company in response to market shifts, geopolitical tensions, or even public relations crises, and still come out ahead, you're dealing with people who operate on a completely different level of resilience. The philosophical depth here is simple, but profound survival is no longer enough. In a world moving as quickly as ours, it's not the strongest who endure, nor the most intelligent, but the most adaptable. And when adaptability is paired with deep cultural grounding, you get a form of leadership that is both flexible in execution and unshakable in principle. That's a dangerous combination for anyone who wants to maintain control over an unpredictable global stage. So, when we talk about fear, political fear, economic fear, it's not just about competition. It's about the realization that the future will be shaped by those who can stand in two worlds at once, moving seamlessly between them, building bridges where others see borders. And that should be a call to action for all of us in a changing world. Learn to adapt without losing yourself. Because the moment you can do that, you stop being subject to the future and start creating it. If there's one thread running through all of this, it's that power in the modern world no longer belongs solely to governments, armies, or even massive corporations. It belongs to people who can think independently, adapt relentlessly, and act with conviction rooted in something deeper than profit or prestige. That's why the rise of Indian talent on the global stage is not just an economic or technological story. It's a human story. It's about discipline forged through hardship, intelligence sharpened through curiosity, and adaptability honed through navigating contrasts. For leaders like Trump, the warning signs are clear. You cannot intimidate or outmaneuver a generation of professionals and innovators who have learned to thrive in uncertainty. They will not simply take what the system gives them. They will learn it, master it, and then rewrite its rules to suit a larger vision. And that is exactly why their presence at the helm of companies like Google and Microsoft changes the balance of power in ways politics struggles to control. The advice here is not just for nations, but for individuals. If you want to stay relevant in the decades ahead, stop clinging to the idea that stability is your goal. Stability is an illusion. The real goal is growth, resilience, and mastery of change. Learn to operate in environments that are uncomfortable. Seek challenges that stretch your capacity to think, lead, and adapt. And never forget that your greatest strength will always come from knowing who you are, even when you're standing on unfamiliar ground. Because in the end, the future won't be won by those who have the loudest voices or the biggest weapons. It will be shaped by those who can stand calmly at the crossroads of change and choose their own path forward. The question is, when that moment comes for you, will you be ready to step forward, or will you still be waiting for permission?